Well, for the past few weeks, we've been in a series that I entitled, I Want to Believe, where we've been talking about the challenges of belief. What are the things that stand in our way? What are the things that prevent us from really believing? I mean, every one of us has some obstacles. Every one of us has some doubts, some questions, some things we've been dealing with. Maybe your doubts are a little bit more pressing than other people's doubts, or maybe other people you know have doubts that are more pressing than yours. But what we've been dealing with over the past few weeks is just basically, what does it take for a person to either address those doubts and questions and challenges to their faith, or move beyond them, or whatever. What does it take for a person to actually cross that line of faith? And so a couple weeks ago when we first got started, we were talking about how every single thing in our life is actually belief, that you can't get past it. That there are belief systems in our minds that affect everything that we think. And so you can't ever hear a fact without having that fact be somehow colored, shaped, or fashioned in some way by your belief system. Optical illusions are a perfect example of that. You can look at the thing on the page and you can know that the thing you're seeing is wrong, but your brain keeps telling you that it's different. And so that's the way life works. God has wired us that way. He's wired us for the primacy of belief. And so then the next week, what we studied was the fact that every one of us has a desire to understand the unknown and unexplainable. And that God has placed that in our hearts so that we might be drawn towards Him. As the unexplainable, ununderstandable, infinite God, we would be drawn towards Him. And He wants to make Himself known to us. And so that's what we learned a couple weeks ago. And then just last week, we dealt with this whole idea of what are the specific roadblocks that people have in their lives. And we even did a live question and answer thing. If you go to our website this week, you can actually see all of those questions broken down into individual video snippets. They're about 5 minutes each. Individual video snippets of just the question and my live answer for that last week. So if you're interested in knowing how that went out and you didn't get here last week, or if you have a friend that you want to send it to, point them to our website. But today we're going to take a different turn. We're going to look at take this whole issue from a different angle. And for full disclosure, I want to let you know that there's a large portion of my message today that was inspired by a message I heard another preacher preach while I was mowing my lawn this past summer, because I do that. I listen to podcasts. I don't listen to music. I listen to other preachers do their thing. And so I was mowing my lawn, and I was hearing this guy. His name is Andy Stanley. And if you're familiar with North Point Community Church, it's a worthwhile podcast if you are as weird as I. And so, anyway, I'm listening to Andy, and he's beginning to talk about faith and what it takes for a person to come to faith. And it really opened up my eyes to a new way of looking at all this. And so I thought I would share it with you this morning, just to let you know sort of another way to think about this whole issue of how do I approach the challenge of my belief. And so here's the first blank. This is the most important thing that you need to put down. Go ahead if you're taking notes. This is the first thing we're going to put down to give ourselves this new angle on how to understand all this. Number one, it says, if a person is an adult and not a Christian, he or she has a reason, and it's probably a good one. If a person has made it all the way into adulthood and they're not a believer, or they don't have a real faith commitment, maybe they actually believe in God, maybe they show up at church now and then, but maybe it's not personal to them. It's not real. They've never made a commitment. If that's the case, they've got a reason for it. Here in America, most adults have a reason why they're not, quote-unquote, religious or people of faith. And in most cases, those reasons are good ones. Maybe you've heard some of these reasons. We mentioned a couple of them last week. Reasons like, if God is really good and if He's really all-powerful, then why are there bad things that happen? I mean, that's a good reason for not believing that God is good and He's powerful and all those kinds of things. Now, of course, I think I've got an answer for that for myself, but that's not to say it's a bad reason. It's actually a good reason people have for not believing in God. Or maybe one of their reasons is that there are so many world religions. How are you ever going to find out which one is the right one? I mean, it would take your entire life of research and study, and you'd still never know, because you could never go back into the past to see if Jesus really did those miracles and to see if Muhammad really did miracles and all those other kinds of things. You're never going to be able to address all those. That's a reason, and it's a good reason. And maybe you've talked to someone who has a really good reason, and they keep challenging you with these things, and you're wondering about, how do I answer those questions? How do I deal with their reasons? One of the most important reasons I've heard recently is the whole issue of Christian violence and hypocrisy. That there's so much violence in the world, most of it comes from religious people, and so therefore religion must be the scourge of our society, and it's not that some religions are good and some religions are bad. Some people would say all religions are bad. Maybe science is the thing, and it's making someone you know say, I don't believe there is a God because all this could just have come about through the natural, random processes of life. I don't know exactly what it might be for you or for a friend of yours, but I will say this. It's not our job as believers, nor is it our job if we're not believers trying to cross that line. It's not our job to ignore them or to simply discard them or to simply say these reasons are not good, therefore I'm just going to forget about them. It's not our job to ignore these things. Neither is it our job to try to address every detail. There's a third option. And the third option is this. I want you to write this down. For most adults who have good reasons, they don't make decisions by answering all the objections. They make decisions by encountering something personal that shrinks those objections. Adults don't make decisions by answering all objections, but when something personal shrinks those objections. Let me see if I could explain this just a little bit. I'll illustrate. When my wife and I were preparing for the delivery of our first child, we did not know his name. We knew it was a he, but we didn't have a name. And we had gone through all kinds of, you're going to find this interesting, we went through all kinds of mathematical jumping jacks to try to figure out what the best name for our son would be. And I am not joking, we made a spreadsheet. We made an Excel spreadsheet on which I plotted the popular names of our society and what they meant. And then I put down a list of all the names we liked. And there were columns going across the top. And so here was a column that said the name of the kid. And so we had Charlie and a couple other options there. So the name, the full name, and then there was the nickname. But this was a column of nicknames that we liked. And then this was a column of nicknames that we didn't like. And we didn't just list them, we counted them. How many nicknames are there that we did like? How many nicknames are there that we didn't like? And we put a number there. So we had a number and a number. And then here, there was how many possible make fun of names are there that could be created from this name? You know, how many different options are there for making this name totally turn into something bad? And so we listed those numbers. And then we gave a subjective ranking of whether or not Jen really liked the name or whether or not I really liked the name. Was the name in our family or not? Was the name emotionally connected to us? And did we like the meaning of the name? And we had numbers for all these. And then at the far end, I did a mathematical computation weighing which one of these factors were more important to us. And at the very end,